Welcome to a deep dive into something I think is pretty unique, the Awesome Foundation. You ever heard of a foundation that's all about
Oh, yeah.
advancing the interest of awesome in the universe?
It's a pretty catchy mission statement.
Yeah, all right.
And the way they go about it is even more interesting. Giving out microgrants
Yeah.
of $1,000 to all sorts of projects.
And they're not just focused on one place or type of project either. They've got chapters everywhere, from Armenia to Australia, big cities to small towns. Makes you wonder what awesome looks like in all those different places, doesn't it?
That's the intriguing part. Each chapter is completely independent. So they decide what awesome means for their community.
So it's not some big centralized organization
Yeah.
dictating what's worthy.
Not at all. It's very grassroots.
Yeah.
Each chapter has a group of trustees who pool their own money for these grants.
So these trustees are basically everyday people.
Yeah.
Deciding what gets funded, that's a lot of responsibility.
Mhm.
What kind of criteria do they use?
Well, it's all about supporting creativity and innovation, things that might not get funding, through traditional channels.
So those early stage ideas, that might have a big impact, but need a little push to get started.
Exactly. And with no strings attached to the funding, it really empowers people to experiment and take risks.
It makes you think, what would you do with $1,000 to make something awesome happen in your community? What's needed?
That's the question they're trying to spark, isn't it?
Oh.
And if you're really fired up, they even encourage you to start your own chapter.
So anyone could become
Yeah.
a philanthropy leader in their own backyard.
That's pretty cool. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about what kind of projects they're actually funding. Our website has this huge list, and some of them are really surprising.
It really shows you how diverse the concept of awesome can be. You've got everything from arts and technology projects to community development initiatives and some things that are just plain quirky.
Okay, you have to give me an example of just plain quirky. I'm hooked now. Well, one chapter is dedicated to something called dragon dreaming, which definitely piqued my curiosity. And then you've got all these chapters under conservation and climate, tackling everything from global issues to hyper-local initiatives.
That's what I love about this whole thing. It's both global and hyper-local at the same time. So what you're saying is awesome can mean saving the rainforest or creating a community garden.
Precisely. It's all about what
Yeah.
resonates with that particular chapter
Yeah.
and the needs they see in their community.
It really flips the script
Huh.
on traditional philanthropy, doesn't it? It's not some top-down approach. It's about empowering individuals to make a difference on their own terms.
And that's what makes it so powerful. It's not just about the money. It's about trusting people to use that money to bring their unique vision to life.
Okay, so we've talked about the structure and the
Yeah.
philosophy behind the Awesome Foundation, but what about the actual impact? Can a $1,000 grant really make a difference?
That's where it gets really interesting, because sometimes that small amount of seed funding can be the catalyst for something much bigger. It can give someone the confidence to launch a project, attract other supporters, and ultimately create real change.
So it's like that saying, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. But in this case, it's more like, give someone $1,000 and they might just change the world.
Exactly. And even if a project doesn't achieve its initial goals, the lessons learned and the connections made can be incredibly valuable.
So it's not just about the outcome. It's about the process
Yeah,
and the ripple effects that these grants create.
absolutely.
And that's something we'll explore further when we look at
Right.
specific examples of projects
Yeah.
that have been funded. I'm really looking forward to that. But before we move on, I'm curious, what do you think motivates these trustees to give their own money and time to this?
Well,
From what I've gathered, the trustees come from all walks of life, but they all share a passion for their communities and a belief in the power of small grants to make a big impact some might be drawn to, the opportunity to discover and nurture new ideas, while others might simply be looking for a fun and meaningful way to connect with their community.
So it's a mix of altruism, curiosity, and community spirit. I can definitely see the appeal. It's like a microcosm of what we all hope for in the world, people coming together to support each other's dreams and make awesome things happen.
It's a powerful message, isn't it? And it reminds us that we don't need to wait for permission or rely on large institutions to make a difference. We can start right where we are with what we have and create ripples of awesomeness that spread outward
Now that's an inspiring thought. But for now, let's take a pause and come back to dig into some specific examples of those ripples of awesomeness in action. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Awesome Foundation. As we were talking about, those ripples of awesomeness before, it made me think about something. We've been focusing a lot on the positive aspects of this micro-granting approach. But are there any potential downsides or challenges that come with it?
That's a great question, and it's important to consider the complexities involved. One potential challenge with microgrants is the limited scope of funding. While $1,000 can be a significant boost for some projects, it might not be enough to sustain them long term.
So it's more like a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Than a complete solution.
Exactly. It's seed funding that helps get things off the ground, but often requires grantees to seek additional support to achieve their full vision. This can be both a challenge and an opportunity because it forces them to be resourceful and build partnerships.
Makes sense. It's not a handout, it's a hand up.
Right.
But with so many independent chapters, how do they ensure consistency?
In terms of quality and impact, I mean, what's stopping a chapter from funding something that's not actually all that beneficial or awesome? That's where the trust factor comes in. The Awesome Foundation relies heavily on the judgment and integrity of its trustees. They're the ones responsible for vetting proposals and deciding what aligns with the Foundation's mission, even though that mission is interpreted differently by each chapter.
So it's a bit of a decentralized quality control system. But that raises another question. Are there any mechanisms for measuring the impact of these microgrants? I mean, how do they know if they're actually making a difference?
That's one of the ongoing discussions. Within the Foundation, it's not always easy to quantify the impact of these small grants, especially when you're dealing with projects that focus on social good or creative expression.
Because how do you measure the impact of, say, a community mural or a workshop that teaches kids how to code? It's not always about tangible outcomes.
Exactly. It's about fostering creativity, building community, and inspiring change, which can be harder to measure with traditional metrics. However, many chapters do encourage grantees to share their stories and document their progress, which helps to showcase the impact in a more qualitative way.
So it's about capturing those ripples.
Yeah.
Even if they're not always quantifiable.
Precisely. And that's one of the things that makes this approach so intriguing. It's not just about checking boxes and meeting targets. It's about empowering people to pursue their passions and make a difference in ways that might not fit neatly into a spreadsheet.
That brings us back to those dinosaur-themed projects we talked about earlier. Haven't been any funded yet, I have to admit. I'm a little obsessed with the idea of someone getting a grant to do something dynamite.
Well, to my knowledge, no dinosaur-specific projects have received funding yet. But you're right, the fact that they specifically mention it on their website speaks volumes about their playful and open-minded approach. They're not afraid to embrace the quirky and unexpected. And that's refreshing in a world that often takes itself too seriously.
I totally agree. But let's get back to the process for a moment. We talked about the trustees have a lot of responsibility in choosing which projects to fund. What does that selection process actually look like? Is it a super serious, buttoned-up affair?
Not at all. Each chapter has its own unique approach, but it's generally a very collaborative and engaging process. Some chapters hold pitch events where applicants can present their ideas in person, while others rely on written applications. It's all about finding what works best for each community and creating a space where people feel comfortable sharing their ideas.
So it's more about fostering a sense of community and creative energy than intimidating applicants with a rigid process.
Absolutely. And remember, these trustees are volunteers who are passionate about their communities and genuinely excited to discover and support awesome projects. They're not sitting in some ivory tower. They're actively engaged in making their communities more vibrant and engaging.
I think that's what really sets the Awesome Foundation apart from traditional philanthropy. It's so much more personal and community-driven. Speaking of which, let's talk about some specific examples of projects they funded. We touched on this briefly in the first part, but I'm eager to dive deeper and see those ripples of awesomeness in action.
I'm happy to share some highlights. One that immediately comes to mind is a project funded by the Rockport, Massachusetts chapter. They supported an initiative to create a community-built, solar-powered electric vehicle charging station.
That's amazing. It's practical, innovative, and addresses a real need. in the community. I can already see the ripple effects. Reducing carbon emissions, promoting sustainable transportation, and fostering a sense of community pride.
Exactly. And it demonstrates how the Awesome Foundation empowers people to think outside the box and find creative solutions to local challenges.
All right, give me another example. I'm ready for more ripple action.
All right. How about this one? From the Watertown, South Dakota chapter, they funded a program that provides free art supplies and workshops to underprivileged youth.
That's so heartwarming. It's about fostering creativity, self-expression, and providing opportunities that might not otherwise be available. Who knows? Maybe that grant will spark a lifelong passion for art in some of those kids, or even inspire the next Picasso.
It's definitely possible. And that's the beauty of these micro grants. They have the potential to unlock hidden talents and create pathways for individuals to reach their full potential.
It's incredible to think that a relatively small amount of money can have such a profound impact on people's lives. These aren't just projects, they're investments in human potential.
And that's what makes the Awesome Foundation so inspiring. It's a reminder that even small acts of generosity can create ripples of change that extend far beyond the initial grant.
I'm loving these examples, but I'm curious to hear about some of the more unconventional projects they've supported.
Yeah.
You know, the ones that really push the boundaries of what awesome can be.
Well, one that comes to mind is a project funded by the South Shore chapter in Canada. They supported the creation of a library of things where people can borrow items like tools, camping gear, and musical instruments.
That's such a cool idea. It's practical, sustainable,
Yeah.
and promotes a sense of community sharing. Plus, it gives people access to things they might not be able to afford or have space to store.
And it fosters a sense of connection and belonging. It's a reminder that awesome can be about building bridges and fostering a more inclusive society, not just about funding individual projects.
So we've seen examples of
Innovation.
creativity and community impact. What are some of the broader trends you've observed in the types of projects funded by the Awesome Foundation?
One clear trend is a focus on sustainability and environmental initiatives. Many chapters are supporting projects that promote conservation, renewable energy, and climate action. This reflects a growing awareness of the urgent need to address these issues at a local level.
It's heartening to see communities taking action and not waiting for governments or large corporations to lead the way.
Another trend is a focus on social justice and equity. Chapters are funding projects that address issues like poverty, homelessness, and access to education, reflecting a commitment to creating a more just and equitable world for everyone.
It's about recognizing that awesome can't exist in a vacuum. It needs a foundation of fairness and opportunity for all.
And let's not forget the arts. There's a vibrant community of artists and creators who are receiving support to pursue their passions and bring beauty and inspiration to the world.
Because art has the power to transcend boundaries, spark dialogue, and connect us in ways that nothing else can.
Absolutely. And that diversity of projects, it's truly inspiring. It shows that there are countless ways to make a difference, no matter how big or small. And that awesome can take on many forms.
That's a perfect segue to my next question. With so many diverse projects being funded, how do they measure success? Is it even possible to have a universal definition of awesome when it comes to impact?
That's a great question. And it gets to the heart of what makes the Awesome Foundation so unique. They don't impose a rigid definition of success or require grantees to meet specific metrics. Instead, they embrace the inherent messiness of social change and creative expression. Recognizing that impact can manifest in many different ways.
So it's more about trusting the process and empowering individuals to define success on their own terms. But doesn't that make it difficult to evaluate the overall effectiveness of the foundation?
It certainly presents challenges in terms of traditional evaluation methods, but the Awesome Foundation is more interested in fostering a culture of experimentation and learning than proving its impact through quantifiable data.
So it's about embracing the unknown and recognizing that failure is often a necessary part of innovation and growth.
Exactly. And they encourage chapters to share their experiences, both successes and failures, so that everyone can learn and grow together. It's a very collaborative and community-driven approach to philanthropy.
That's really refreshing to hear. It's not about competition or proving who's doing it better. It's about working together to make the world a more awesome place, one project at a time.
And that's a powerful message, isn't it? It reminds us that we're all in this together, and that even small acts of generosity and support can have a ripple effect that extend far beyond our immediate circles.
Now that's an inspiring thought to end on, but we're not done yet. We still have more to explore in our deep dive into the Awesome Foundation. Join us after the break as we delve into the stories of some of the individuals who have been touched by these microgrants and hear firsthand how they've used this funding to make their communities more awesome. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been talking about all these amazing projects funded by the Awesome Foundation. But I think it's time we hear directly from the people behind them. What's it really like to receive one of these grants, and what kind of impact does it have on their work?
Yeah, it's one thing to talk about the theory of microgrants, but hearing those personal stories really brings it to life. I've come across a few examples that I think you'll find fascinating.
I'm all ears. Hit me with those inspiring tales.
Well, one story that's stuck with me is about a group of women in Detroit who received a grant to start a mobile bike repair workshop. They were passionate about cycling and saw a need in their community for affordable bike maintenance, especially in underserved neighborhoods.
So they took their passion and turned it into a community service. That's awesome. But I'm curious, how did that $1,000 grant actually help them? It doesn't seem like much. To equip a mobile workshop.
You'd be surprised how far a little bit of seed money can go. When combined with creativity and determination, the grant allowed them to purchase some basic tools and supplies, but more importantly, it gave them the validation and confidence to launch their project.
So it's not just about the material resources, it's about the psychological boost and the sense of legitimacy that comes with receiving that funding.
Exactly. That initial grant helped them attract additional support from local businesses and community organizations. They were able to expand their services, offer free workshops, and even partner with schools to teach kids about bike mechanics.
That's a perfect example. And those ripples we were talking about, like that $1,000 grant with the Pebble, that created a wave of positive change in their community.
And it all started because someone believed in their idea and gave them a chance. That's the power of the Awesome Foundation.
Okay. I'm ready for another inspiring story. What else have you got?
All right. This next one takes us to rural India, where a group of teachers received a grant to create a library on wheels for children in remote villages. They recognized that many kids didn't have access to books or educational resources, so they converted a small van into a mobile library filled with books, games, and learning materials.
That's incredible. Talk about thinking outside the box. But I imagine there were logistical challenges in bringing a library to remote villages.
There were definitely hurdles to overcome, but the grant allowed them to purchase the van, fuel, and supplies, which would have been a major barrier otherwise. They also used the funding to train volunteers and develop a system for rotating books among different villages.
So they created a sustainable system that could continue to benefit children even after the initial grant money was spent.
Exactly. And the impact was significant. Not only did it improve literacy rates and foster a love of reading, but it also created a sense of community and brought joy to these isolated villages.
It's amazing to think that something as simple as a van filled with books can make such a difference in people's lives. It really underscores the importance of access to education and the power of creative solutions.
And it shows that the Awesome Foundation's mission transcends geographical boundaries and cultural differences. Awesome can take on many forms, but it always boils down to making a positive impact.
These stories are so inspiring. I'm starting to get a bit of grant envy myself. Do you have any final words of wisdom
for our listeners
who might be feeling inspired to apply for a grant or even start their own chapter?
My advice would be to embrace the spirit of the Awesome Foundation. Be bold, be creative, and don't be afraid to think outside the box. Remember, they're looking for projects that are unique, innovative, and have the potential to make a real difference in your community.
And don't be discouraged if your first idea doesn't get funded. The Awesome Foundation is all about experimentation and learning. Sometimes the most unexpected ideas turn out to be the most impactful.
And if you're passionate about something, don't wait for someone else to make it happen. Gather a group of like-minded individuals. Pool your resources and start your own chapter. You might be surprised by what you can accomplish together.
That's a fantastic reminder that anyone can be a philanthropist and that even small acts of generosity can create ripples of awesomeness that extend far beyond our immediate circles.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Awesome Foundation. We hope you've enjoyed exploring this unique approach to philanthropy and that you're feeling inspired to make a difference in your own community.
If you're curious to learn more about the Awesome Foundation or find a chapter near you, be sure to check out their website. We'll include a link in the show notes.
And remember, the world is full of awesome waiting to be unleashed. Go out there and make it happen.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and
Yeah.
keep diving deep.